and welcome to the Redhead and the Bearded Beauty. I am the Bearded Beauty.
And I'm the Redhead.
And today, you might notice, we're in a little different setting. We have a couple special guests here. We are going to be talking boil water advisories. We've had a couple of those, so we thought it would be good to bring in experts from a couple different organizations to talk about this.
Yeah, we hadn't had a boil advisory since the 90s, and you and I had the pleasure of being here for our first one in like 20 years, and then another one. So,
yeah, our boss was gone for the first one.
Yeah, our boss was gone for the first one, and then I was gone for the second one, so like we've kind of been flying by the seat of our pants. So our boss is going out of town in a couple weeks, so we're expecting another boil advisory. We're just kidding,
yes,
of course.
We're kidding, but,
yeah.
but we're ready this time. So.
Yeah, every time one of us is gone or our team is down someone, we have another boil advisory.
Or something big happens. It's drop everything and respond to a crisis. So.
Yeah, but I mean, we've been pretty lucky.
Yeah.
And I mean, we haven't had any big incidents, and ours have been over pretty quickly. You know, I know that in a lot of communities, boil advisories are more common in other big cities. You know, I'm in a lot of groups for government, communicators and stuff. And so I was sharing some of the stuff that we were doing, and I was like, what other tips do you have that we can do next time? And they're like, it only lasted 36 hours. Like, that's nothing.
Yeah.
So they were kind of making fun of me, but...
But, we want to learn from everything we do, and we meet with these groups that we're going to be visiting with here shortly. We meet with them and we say, okay, what did we do well? What did we, not get right?
Yeah.
What can we do better next time? And we've listened to the community. There's things that the community expects from us that we are going to improve on next time.
Yeah, and we're always trying to find different ways of getting information out to people, not only in the boil advisories, but in everything that we do. So we're trying to grow that and be, meet their expectations. I did take umbrage with one comment we got during the first boil advisory. Someone called in and said that we didn't have a TikTok at the time. The city didn't, but they said that they get all of their news from TikTok, so we should put it on TikTok. And I have concerns over that level of access to news.
Yeah, that they're getting their news on TikTok.
I feel like they're missing some news if they're only getting it from TikTok, so I have some concerns. But now we have a TikTok.
We have a TikTok.
And we will do that, in the future. So.
And we have exciting videos on there, like both of us having a cat head.
Yeah, we were, sometimes when we're, waiting to film other things or doing things, so it's, trying to get that content in between actual information we put out.
we do sprinkle in some good information in there, but it's the news you want, not the news you need.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, on that note, why don't you say we get to our guests here? Yeah. So joining us today, we have experts from the Wichita Water Utility. We have KDHE and Emergency Management with Sedgwick County. So first we have Don Henry with Public Works and Utilities, Cathy Tucker-Vogel with KDHE, and Julie Stimson with Sedgwick County Emergency Management. Thank you all for being here. Now, Don, let's start with you. Give us a little bit of background about what you do with the city.
Sure. So I'm the Deputy Director of Public Works and Utilities, and I'm responsible for basically 5 divisions that have to do with delivery of clean, safe drinking water to almost 500,000 customers in Wichita, in and around Wichita, as well as wastewater collection and treatment, the stormwater utility and flood control project, and also environmental remediation.
And how about, Don, outside of work? What do you do when you're not here and making sure we have safe drinking water?
Rest. No, I enjoy a number of things. I like to be outside a lot. I enjoy playing golf. Got a good group of friends, some buddies we play golf with. I fiddle around on the guitar a little bit, but my favorite thing to do is just to hang out with my family and enjoy their company. In fact, just got back recently from a 2-week vacation where we toured 4 of our nation's parks. We saw Yosemite and Sequoia National Park, Zion, and Arches National Park in Utah. Had a great time.
Very nice. All right, Cathy, how about you?
So my name's Cathy Tucker-Vogel. I am Chief of the Public Water Supply Section at the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. We oversee all of the Safe Drinking Water Act requirements for all of the public water supply systems in the state of Kansas. And we also oversee the State Revolving Loan Fund program, which loans money to water systems for infrastructure improvements, and we oversee the operator certification program, which makes sure that all public water supply systems are under the supervision of a certified, qualified operator.
Now, Kathy, I forgot to mention this up front, but you're stationed out at Topeka, correct?
Yes, our offices are in Topeka at the Curtis Building.
We want to thank you for actually being here in person. I know you had another event going on that you were already here for, but thank you for coming and joining us in person for this.
I'm happy to be here.
You mean
Thank
she didn't come here just for this podcast?
I think you were. You were going to come here just for our podcast.
When it was scheduled a couple weeks ago, yes, I was going to just drive down here, but it worked out well that I was already going to be in Wichita today anyway.
That's great.
So
That's when you know we have made it, when people are driving in from out of town for our podcast.
Listen, we have like 40 listeners and people are coming in.
All right, so tell us a little bit about who you are outside of work.
So I live in Lawrence, so I'm a Jayhawk, so we're national champions, so that's one of the things I do during basketball season is catch all of the KU basketball games. As far as hobbies, I like to read and I watch my birds at my backyard bird feeders.
I love that. I do
So,
the same thing.
yes, so I'm up to 4 feeders now, so since we don't have kids at home anymore, we're spending all our disposable income on bird feed.
Very nice. Yeah, my daughter's in 4-H, and so her woodworking project this year is a birdhouse. So this weekend I'm going to be finishing that up with her. So got to
Yes.
do all the painting.
Yeah.
So very exciting. All right, Julie, tell us about what you do with Sedgwick County Emergency Management.
All right. I'm Julie Stimson, Sedgwick County Emergency Management Director. We do the disaster preparedness planning, response and recovery efforts for the county and all the local jurisdictions. We are, for our preparedness activities, we go out and we help educate and train people to prepare for things that we don't want to happen. And then when things do happen, we help bring resources together and collaborate with partners to make sure that we're doing our response and recovery efforts to help take care of our residents.
Very good. And what about Julie outside of emergency management?
Outside, I'm an avid outdoors person. I love being on the lake and camping. I'm adjusting to being an empty nester. My children are both grown now and moved out, so we're adjusting to that. I go to school, so I don't have a whole lot of free time right now, but so school takes up a lot of my time, but most of the time I'm either at the lake or camping when I do have time.
Very nice.
I
Go
always
ahead.
feel bad about emergency management because you guys are the nicest people that I never want to talk to.
Exactly. It's like, nice to meet you. I hope we don't ever see you again.
Yeah. No, I give you props for going back to school while working full time. I did the same thing, and it is draining, but well worth it. So
Yes.
anyway.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to jump in here with some questions. The first one is for Dawn. So Public Works, we're not just sitting around waiting for something to go wrong. Talk about how we are constantly looking at monitoring the water system and some of the things that we look for.
Sure. So in terms of the water treatment,
Yeah.
right? We have a around the clock, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Our water treatment plant is staffed with a team of operators. We have maintenance staff on hand. We have administrators. We have a full-service water quality laboratory. All of those teams work together to produce compliant, safe drinking water. And so one of the things that's critical is our automated monitoring system. And so we've got eyes all of the time on all the critical components of our treatment process. And our operators receive alarms at the control panel, and so they're keeping their eyes on those alarms. And when a critical alarm comes up, something that may affect water turbidity, if there's an increase in turbidity, if there's a decrease in the disinfectant levels, or if there's a critical drop in the distribution system pressures, then that requires immediate attention in terms of investigating, diagnosing, correcting, and more often than not, we're able to make corrections and adjust that and head things off at the pass. That may require us to document and report to KDHE. Should it go to a place where there's a regulatory concern or one of these events is prolonged, then we reach out to KDHE, to Cathy and her team, to bring them in, let them know what we're dealing with, how we're working it, what we're doing. And then if it goes into an area where we start to question whether there could be a risk to the drinking water, then collaboratively we come to a decision on whether or not a boil advisory is warranted.
You just described a multi-step process that is obviously lots of experts being very careful with our water supply. But when there is an issue, I mean, I've been in the room, that moves
Yeah.
so quickly. You're talking about, contacting KDHE and making those calls. That happens in a matter of minutes. I mean, it's very fast.
It absolutely does, and like I said, on the front end, before we get to a critical point when we suspect we may be having some trouble, often we'll reach out to the local office here and speak to them before we bring Cathy and her team in. But once we get to that point where we know customers are going to be impacted or a boil advisory is going to be necessary, then you're right. It's a multi-pronged response. There's a lot of things happening in parallel, and Megan, you're in the communications team is a really important part of that. You've been there, in the heat of the battle, and so, we immediately notify, right, both internal, KDHE, our communications team, our critical customers, medical facilities, schools, McConnell Air Force Base, our wholesale water customers. It's important that all of them know on the front end, as well as our partners with Sedgwick County, Julie and her team over at Emergency Management, because communications is so important. And then on the technical side, we have systems planning engineers that assist our distributions crew with coming up with a plan to isolate areas of our distribution system if that's necessary, or to come up with a flushing plan if we need to go out and flush bad water out and replace that with good water. And keep in mind, all of this stuff is working in parallel, so multiple task force within this team. And at the same time, we have our laboratory, our water quality staff developing a sampling plan, pulling the resources together, the commodities and equipment that we need to do that, as well as the people, right? We have 180 water sampling stations that are approved by KDHE within our network, where we go out and pull whatever type of sample and analysis is needed. We pull them from those stations, run those tests within our own laboratory. And then within the plan itself, we have our O&M team that is
Real
coming.
quick, sorry. Explain what O&M is.
Operations and maintenance, right? So operators and maintenance are working together along with our electronic technicians to troubleshoot, to diagnose, to mitigate any risks, and then come up with a solution to correct whatever the issue is. And with the main, there's two main things that we keep in mind. One is protect public health and the water supply at all times. That's number one.
Yeah.
We have to have water to fight fires with. We have to have clean drinking water for sanitary purposes and to hydrate ourselves, right? So those are the two main things. And then the next in priority is to stay safe through the operation. And then after that, it is to mitigate and make sure that we have all the things in place, and we're working this around the clock to minimize the impact and the duration of the event.
Definitely.
Gotcha.
Julie, I was joking, you're the nicest person that I never want to talk to.
That's a compliment. That's okay.
Yes. So your department deals with emergencies. You guys are ready to go whenever we deal with these things. You're well equipped. The first thing that comes to everyone's mind is that you alert the public, and we'll cover that in a minute. But besides notification, what's your team doing once you get the call of boil water advisory?
Just like Don was mentioning, we're in communication with some key partners too, especially like our hospitals and our schools. We're constantly assessing the situation to see if we exceed local resources to handle the situation. We have the authority to contact with the Kansas Division of Emergency Management if we need to do any kind of disaster declaration, or if we need them to help dispatch state resources to help manage the situation. So a lot of it is just sitting back, gathering information, and getting the level of severity and how long this could go on. So that's our first step when we first get that call, is just, okay, we're up, we're watching, and this is that constant communication.
Yeah.
Now, both of our organizations, we've taken some heat the last two. I mean, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't address that we didn't send out notification to people on their cell phones with the alert. Explain a little bit about why that is, especially the first one back in October.
The one in October, so this was kind of the perfect storm. It had been so long since we've had to deal with a boil order advisory. I myself am fairly new into my position, so we didn't really have a good network quite yet to handle this type of situation. So there were some delayed communications about who needs to contact who. And once we did find out the information, the news, the media, the communications teams, the information was out there everywhere. There was news already on site. So we didn't feel the need that we needed to send out a WIA alert, a wireless emergency alert system, because typically that part of our communications isn't used except for true imminent threats. Here locally in our plan, we have 2 conditions that we alert cell phones, and they're weather related. They are the flash flooding and the tornadoes. Just recently, the National Weather Service added also another severity of thunderstorms of 80-mile-an-hour winds and baseball-sized hail or larger. So typically, we wouldn't alert cell phones for water boil advisories. Since then, a lot of process improvements and meetings and collaboration has happened since then. We had a lot of lessons learned, and from something like that, you can just move forward and figure out how to do it better next time.
And you guys have been working on, I can't remember if it was since the last boiler, even before that, a system for an opt-in alert. Can you talk a little about that?
Correct. So we always stress the layered communication approach. There is no one communication system that's going to be 100% effective 100% of the time. So we have an integrated public alert warning system, or IPAWS. It's a federal system that we choose to utilize, and it includes things like the emergency alert system, our broadcast alert system, our wireless emergency alerts, cell phones, the TV runners, all of that stuff. And then we had the mass notification piece. And our mass notification system up to this point has been used for internal communication. New technology is coming to fruition, and now we're starting to see the capabilities where people can sign up and opt in to receive messages that may not warrant a true imminent threat mass notification, but they still want to know what's going on in their communities. So that is something we are working on right now, is to build those platforms. We already have the mass notification system in place, so we're just expanding a resource within it, and then we're going to be able to help distribute that to our local jurisdictions to also be users of that system.
Now, in some of the meetings we have had since all this, we have talked about the importance of not overusing the system, because then people go and shut those alerts off. Talk about the importance of making sure we only notify those life safety emergencies, because we don't want people to be turned off by it.
Yes, and what people need to realize is when we're sounding off the cell phones, it's not a text message. These alarms take over control of your phone, and they are sounding very loud, alarming sounds that gets your attention. And if we did that for everything, we would have people being annoyed and they'd be turning them off. And studies have shown that that's what's happening. Same thing with NOAA weather radios. We preach to everybody have NOAA weather radios, but people turn them off because they don't want to get woken up, which is the whole point of the NOAA weather radio. But it's loud, it's noisy, it's annoying, and so we got to be very careful. And it's very disruptive. I mean, you're disrupting hospital procedures, you're disrupting schools, you're disrupting, meetings and things. So we want to make sure we're reserved and we're only communicating what we truly need people to take immediate action.
Very good. All right, Kathy, the
Yes.
first time I met you was at 12:30 in the morning. Most of the times when I meet someone at 12:30 in the morning, it's not a good thing. But this time it was. We were on a Teams call, and you were giving us the good news that we could rescind the boil advisory. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about, from the first time that you get that call from the city or from any water service provider, what your team starts to do at that point.
So we do have a regulation that requires all public water supply systems to notify us and local officials, and we consider emergency management one of those local officials that needs to be notified that there is a problem. And so that's a regulatory requirement of all public water supply systems. So once we get that call, we have the discussion like we had with Don and his team about the situation, how long, when did the situation start, how long has it been in effect, just ask some questions about what's going on, and then we make a determination on whether a boil water advisory is needed. And there are many reasons why we issue boil waters. The most common one is water line breaks. And you experienced one of those here in Wichita several months ago. And we, on occasion, also have boil water advisories for elevated turbidity levels, which is what the most recent one was. So this is not, I would say high turbidity isn't common, but it also does happen on occasion at surface water systems. And the reason we're concerned about high turbidity is when you've got high turbidity water, that provides an opportunity for microbiological pathogens like E. coli or Cryptosporidium to get into the drinking water system. And of course, both of those can cause gastrointestinal issues and make people sick, and we want to make sure we're protecting public health and avoid that. So we issue the boil water advisory, and then the water system will correct the problem. And once the problem is corrected and we see that there's a good chlorine residual throughout the distribution system, then they will collect samples. And the number of samples they have to collect depends on the size of the system. So the minimum for a very small water supply system is 4. So that's like some of your neighboring public water supply systems would only need to collect 4. City of Wichita collected, I believe it was 180.
Right.
So those samples all come back absent what is called total coliform and E. coli, and as long as all the samples come back absent, then we can lift the boil water at that point.
Now, the last couple have lasted fewer than 48 hours each. And sometimes, can you just talk about the timing and the length of the water boil advisories, why it takes at least 24 hours and sometimes longer before these advisories can be lifted?
So you're fortunate in Wichita that the city has their own lab. And so that cuts down on the amount of time. An average time for somebody that doesn't have their own lab is usually 4 to 5 days. So it really helps when you have your own lab and you can do your own analytical work and do your own analysis. So the analytical method that the laboratory uses is a 24-hour method. So you'll never have a boil water lifted less than 24 hours. And usually 48 hours is a really fast turnaround time. And that's simply, in the case of Wichita, a function of the number of samples they had to take, plus you have to get the problem corrected before you take your samples, make sure all that high turbidity water that got into the distribution system is flushed out, so that when you do take the samples, you know that the samples that are being taken are representative of the water that's going through the distribution system and being delivered through the taps to customers.
Yeah, and it's right after, in October, after we had our first boil advisory, I remember Tyler and I were talking, another Kansas town had theirs, and they were going on something like 4 or 5 days. And we're like, well, we did great.
We did rather well.
So if it is a water system that doesn't have their own laboratory and they may not have extra sample bottles on hand, then what happens is we have to mail, which usually overnight ship, additional sample bottles. They have to take the samples and then they overnight ship them back to the KDHE laboratory. So see there, you've got a couple of days just in shipping bottles back and forth.
That's wild.
So that's why sometimes you see it takes 4 to 5 days.
Now, it's my understanding that either the water service provider or KDHE can issue the boil advisory, but only KDHE can rescind that?
That's correct.
Yeah.
So in the case of Wichita, which, you know, you have a great communications team, and so you have the ability to issue those notices yourself.
Yeah.
However, in order to make sure that the customers, your customers, are confident that the problem has been resolved, it's KDHE then that gives the okay to lift the boil water advisory. So it's a confidence, in trying to instill confidence in your customers that everything has been checked out and the state is having oversight and making sure that everything's okay.
Definitely.
Yeah, now it's been, what, before these last two, had been 20 years,
Yeah.
something like that, since the last one. So, forbid it happens again, what are some tips that we should give residents that what they should do in case of another boil advisory?
So one thing I would say, and this kind of goes to emergency management, you know, I think you all recommend that people have an emergency kit in their homes that includes extra water, so you don't have to boil your water. At least maybe that gets you through a couple of days, and in Wichita, that's probably long enough. So that's one thing. Also, just pay attention and do what the boil advisory instructs you to do. And don't use the ice in your ice maker, dump it out.
Yeah.
And even after the water gets turned back on, I would cycle through your ice machine a few times, throw that ice out, do that a couple of times to make sure that there's not any water that might be contaminated that's in your household water lines. You may want to flush your household plumbing. We have instructions on our website about how to do that at the household level, so to let folks step through flushing your household plumbing. That's most common probably when it's been a prolonged incident. But, people may want to, they may feel safer if they go ahead and flush their plumbing, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And we're not recommending people just go out and hoard bottles of water. It is okay to boil your water.
I was actually going to speak to that a little bit too. That's, she's absolutely right. We always advise for any kind of disaster preparedness, at least a 3-day water supply for your family and pets. Consider your pet needs as well. And it's a boil advisory, so you can still boil the water. You don't have to rush to the store. Now, obviously, it's different if we lose water, but boil water advisories, I think a lot of folks don't either want to do it, or they just kind of forget that piece and they go running to the stores, and there's no need for that unless you do have a true emergency need. But again, re-emphasizing for any kind of disaster preparedness, having that 3-day supply, and exactly as she said, you should be able to get through just fine with your water needs.
I know back in October, I was going to the store to pick up dinner the day that the last one got issued, and the water bottles were just cleared out.
Yeah.
No, it's okay. We don't have to.
And
rush
we
to the
are
store.
very fortunate here too. We do have resources here. We've got, like our Dillons and Walmarts and those things that they always step up to the plate too and help us with
Yep.
those things. We saw that with the recent tornado response. So,
Yeah. It's a convenience thing. It's much easier to go buy bottled water than boil your water for a minute and then have to store it
Yes.
in containers in your household. So I understand that, but yes, we don't want to have people hoarding water, so.
Yeah, and that goes for any emergency situation.
Right,
Try to be
yeah.
mindful of other people. But I know that we're working on a couple ways to get the word out in the future. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we've heard since the last two events, people have wanted more ways to connect, and so at the city, we were looking into different things that how we can reach people in different ways. And the first thing we did, we have mass email distribution for people. So on our website, we just created another button, sign up for emergency alerts. So you just go to wichita.gov and you can sign up for alerts right there. That's one way. Another thing we're doing, we're creating a web page called wichita.gov/alert. And it'll be a blank page. I think if you click on it and go there when there's not an emergency or not some event going on, it's just going to be a web page that says, hey, this in the event of an emergency or an event, this will be where you get your most up-to-date information. And we're going to do updates every hour, every 30 minutes, something like that. Even if it's no update, we're going to say at this time we have no update, so we
Yeah.
can try to give people the most accurate information. So that's something we're going to do going forward. So just highlight those.
Yeah.
All right, anything else, water boil advisory you guys want to cover?
Yeah, one thing I want to add is we get a lot of calls at KDHE, and I'm sure you probably get them here too, from restaurants and food
Yes.
service industry people. So that food service and restaurants, that's all overseen by the Kansas Department of Agriculture, Food and Lodging Division. So if you are a restaurant owner or work in the food service industry, those questions that you might have about whether you can use your water fountain, your fountain drinks and some of the make your coffee, make your tea, those types of things, those should all be directed to the Department of Agriculture Food Safety folks. And on the boil water advisory issues, that boil water advisories that we issue, we include that link in the phone number there, and I think you guys probably included it on your self-issued one. So just comment, because we'll take the calls, but what we generally do is direct them to the Department of Agriculture, so.
Yeah, that's a good note. I have one thing, Dawn, I want you to address. One of the most common questions that I get is about the blue poles in neighborhoods.
Right.
Could you talk about the blue poles?
Yeah, so the blue poles that you're referring to, those are actually the sampling stations
Yep.
that I mentioned earlier, and Cathy mentioned. There's 180 of those within a city's water distribution network, and they're laid out in such a way that they give a representative sample of the condition of the water across the board at any time a sample is pulled, and so they're set up for that one specific reason. In the past, we relied upon businesses to allow us to come in, to pull the sample from a potable sink and run the samples that way. That became more problematic as plumbing fixtures changed, because you don't want to mix hot water and cold water together. You want to get that representative sample off of a cold water line. And so, like sinks in our homes, a lot of businesses are the same way. They've gone to a sink that has a mixing valve. And so when you run into that situation, that's no longer a place you can use. You have to move on and find something else. And then when we ran into the challenges with the pandemic, and a lot of businesses weren't open during normal hours, or may not have been open at all, or may have been leery about having more people come into their establishment. That was really the point. It said, you know what, it makes sense at this point in time to be out in the forefront and with the leaders in the industry and go ahead and put in this network. And so that resulted in the blue poles that you see out there.
Yes, we get a lot of questions about the blue poles.
All right, so one thing we like to do on this show is tell some very good jokes or bad jokes, some dad jokes. So did you guys come prepared with your dad jokes?
I don't have lemon. I don't have a joke.
Don?
So, singing in the shower is a lot of fun, right?
Yeah.
Till you
do it all
get
the time.
soap in your mouth, and then it's a soap opera.
Nice.
I wish I had a joke, but I don't.
I got one.
All right.
It's
good.
water related, of course. So why did I stop drinking water when I was studying chemistry?
Why?
Because water dilutes concentration.
Oh,
Very nice.
that's good.
Very nice.
That's good.
That is good.
Why do dogs float on the water? They're good boys.
Good.
Yeah. I had a whole list of water jokes, and that was on there,
Oh,
and I deleted it because I just...
you're like, that's a
No,
bad one.
nope, I'm not going
Who
with
would say that?
So what keeps a dock floating above water?
Peer pressure.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
It can't be one of these podcasts without Megan ruining at
I have
least
to
one
ruin a joke. I love to ruin them.
All right, Cathy, I'll make up for you. I've got a
Okay.
whole list. I could go all day,
Excellent.
but I'll do
Excellent.
one more.
Help me out.
So, where can you find an ocean with no water?
I don't know.
A map.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
There you go.
that's
With
good.
that,
That's not even funny.
That makes it the best dad joke ever, right?
I am a dad, so it comes with the territory.
I have a 15-year-old daughter that would tell you I'm the joke, so
Yeah.
you know how that is.
I don't even get the courtesy laughs from my girls anymore.
You
Just
the
get the
eye
eye
rolls.
roll.
Yeah.
Dad. So, all right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us and talking about this and helping inform the public a little bit about what all goes into this. So,
Yeah. Thanks for being here. It was a great time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
and thank you for joining us. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please email them to social@wichita.gov. And again, thanks for watching.